The presenting sponsor of Moontower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello, friends, and thanks for listening to Moontower Soccer. This week, we'll cover Austin FC's loss away at FC Dallas, and then we'll preview the final 2 games of the year. I can't believe it, the last 2. And then we'll also cover a few other pieces of Austin FC news. My name's Landon Cottom, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley. And Landon and I, we might have gotten closer than anybody else from Austin to Copa Tejas on Saturday.
Yeah.
Is that right? Because
us and Roberto, and then I guess probably Chris Bills were closer than any of the players for sure.
For sure, yeah. So what did you think? You hadn't seen or read much about it, or I don't think you'd really seen a ton. What you think about the trophy itself?
I saw a very blurry cell phone picture of it before it had even been polished. And so I had like a vague idea of what it was shaped like, but I was pretty impressed by it. I think it's a good looking trophy, and I was glad they didn't go with anything too like, I don't know, like kind of a hokey, like a joke trophy. Like they made it like kind of a classic, respectable trophy and didn't lean too hard into like Texas tropes. Although the base of like the form of the silver part is the shape of Texas, which I thought was a really nice, like subtle little touch. But yeah, I thought it was really nice. We did. I don't know if we should say this on the air. I don't think we were supposed to touch it, but Roberto tried to take the top off to see if we could drink out of it. And we didn't think it came off, but then apparently the Dallas fans were able to, I don't know if they broke it or what, but the top came off for them.
Yeah, I think the tweet that we read was that the top does come off and it was dented, right? Is that what we saw from the Dallas Soccer Show guys? So yeah, we had a chance to do a little live show with the striker. And those of you that got the chance to watch it, thanks for doing that. We had a really fun interview with Katie Ensign, who had a lot of good stuff to say about sort of travel and Copa Tejas and fandom and all that. And so if you didn't, I'll link to it in the show notes if you didn't get a chance to check it out so that people can watch at least that part of the video. I mean, we were us. We were as interesting or as uninteresting as we normally are, but Katie was good. And so I think that was a fun trip overall up until we get to the soccer part of it.
Yeah, and even some of the soccer part was fun.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the soccer part then, maybe.
Yeah. So in the that live show that we did, we kind of made some predictions about the lineup. I think we got all of it right except for the fullbacks, right? So they ended up starting Nick Lima and Hector Jimenez at the fullbacks, playing Lima at left back. And after watching the post-game press conference and watching the game, it seems like he did that to specifically match him up with Hector Obrian, which seems like a pretty smart move. Lima is in general really solid defensively and has been over the last few games. And so I think it made a lot of sense to put Lima on Obrian. And then he mentioned in the post-game press conference really liking Diego and Hector's kind of link up and playing off of each other. So I thought that made sense and also seemed to maybe be the more reliable defensive setup as well. I know Kolmanich is pretty solid defensively, but maybe gets caught out of position a bit more than Hector does. And then with Danny Pereira playing at the 6 again, which we also mentioned was kind of a risky play, right? I think you were asking like, who's the better play for this matchup? And my answer was like, it's give and take either way. I think Pochettino maybe provides you a bit more strength defensively playing in that position. And Danny maybe gives you a little bit more going forward and carrying the ball and breaking the press. And we'll get into how that did, but I think it did play into this game a fair amount.
I guess we mentioned the Copa itself, but we didn't really talk very much about anything that led up to it. It was interesting for me to see in the week leading up to this match, like Austin FC talking about it a lot on the website, on Twitter. I think Anthony Precourt tweeted about it, and it became, I think it was always a thing to the fans, especially from Austin, but it became a thing to the front office too. Were you excited to see that, or do you have any different opinions on maybe why we saw so much talk about it this week?
I mean, I think it was probably like just the last thing to look forward to, really. Like most of this season's, like any hope of joy coming out of the season was probably going to happen at that game. And so I think that had a lot to do with it. I think there's also like maybe some weirdness from the league, because it's not a sanctioned MLS trophy. Like this is a fan led thing, which is a really cool part of it. But like MLS gets weird about stuff that's not theirs because they like having control over everything. And so because it's not theirs, like we weren't sure if they were going to let there be a trophy presentation after the game. We didn't know how that was going to work. And I kind of guessed like if we won, maybe they wouldn't let us do one. And then if Dallas won, they would have let them do one because it was at their home field. But I think that had a lot to do with it, or some to do with it. But it was nice to see that Precourt and Wolff, and I don't know if we saw anything directly from players about Copa Tejas, but it was good to see some folks from the club mentioning it directly and saying that it was important to them.
Yeah, we did. We had heard a rumor that even if Dallas won it, that they weren't going to let them do it on the field. But clearly that changed. I think it ended up, because it was sitting beside us and it disappeared.
Yeah, they had to come steal it from us in the middle of our live stream.
And then because they had to go put it on the Dallas broadcast, so it ended up in the booth with the Dallas soccer announcers. And then they did it after the game. They did the presentation on the field. And then, there's a lot going on in Dallas, and there's a lot of sports that are franchises that are probably like a bigger thing to the city as a whole. But I will admit that the next morning while we were eating hot continental breakfast at the fabulous Fairfield Inn in Frisco, Texas, that like they did run on the like whatever their local ABC station sports channel. They did a whole package on Copa Tejas and the presentation and all that too. So at least it got some. Even in Dallas, like it got some play.
Well, good for them. I think it's also like Dallas cared about it as well. Both teams seem to be fighting really hard to win that game. The fans cared about it. The Dallas fans celebrated like crazy after they won it. And so I think I like that part of it as well, that this hopefully will mean something more going forward. And I think also it proves another point that I've been making various points over the year, that if anybody, like certain Dallas and Houston fans trying to pretend like Austin isn't a rival or isn't going to be a rival, I think that's very clear that that's not true anymore. And anybody who says that they don't think it's true is fucking lying.
I think it's very fair, man. Yeah. Yeah, they try really, really hard to say that we're not their rival, which just kind of proves the point for sure.
All right, let's run through some of the major points of the game here. So early on, the game was a little bit ugly, like not a lot of beautiful soccer being strung together for the first little bit there. Austin kicks off the scoring with Diego Fagundes' goal in the 36th minute. So we were playing along the right touchline. Alex Ring receives it in midfield, turns and hits a long field, switches it across the field to Diego, who ends up one-on-one with Ima Tumasi, the right back. A second defender comes to help, but Nick Lima is making an overlapping run. Both Tumasi and the second defender both kind of run to mark Lima. Tumasi thought that maybe the help was going to switch with him, but it didn't, which gives Diego a bunch of space. He takes a touch into that space and hits a really hard, beautiful curling ball through traffic around Jimmy Mara, the goalkeeper, and toward like right inside the back post. So first goal there for Austin. It was Diego's 7th goal of the year, which I believe puts him joint lead scorer with Cerrillo. Is that right?
That is right. We thought Cerrillo had 8 for a little bit from the PK, but then after that got ruled as an own goal, that put him back on 7. So that left him even. And one thing that I appreciate about the lightly attended Dallas crowd was that I was up getting a beer, but their bars were like set up where you could actually see the game from like standing at the bar. So I was able to see that one anyhow. And actually, I think both those goals came before I got back to my seat. Because they came so close together. It was like a minute and 20 seconds between that brief moment of joy and then the disdain that came after that.
Yeah, 38th minute. Yeah, it's less than 2 minutes after Jesus Ferreira scores a goal. So Ferreira has scored in all 3 matches against us at this point. So you would, and scored in the 2 matches before. Did he score 2 goals in one of those games, or at least he was highly involved in several of the goals in that second game for sure. And then scored in that first game. And so you would imagine he's a guy you would try to mark when he's standing in the 6-yard box. But yeah, there was kind of like a domino effect. And I don't think it was a matter of the players being lazy. This wasn't that last game we're talking about where there's 4 guys standing there in a corner and nobody even tried to get it. That's not what happened here. It was just maybe guys not necessarily doing what they should have been. And Wolff referenced this in the post-game press conference, saying that it was kind of like a domino effect. So in the backfield, Gite is marking Cerrillo. He kind of turns and faces back towards Gite. And Wolff said that he should have been putting pressure on that ball there, which leaves Cerrillo out to dry. Cerrillo chips the ball over Cerrillo to Twumasi on the sideline. Twumasi plays Obrian with a through ball up the sideline. Just before that, Nick Lima and Johan Romagna both kind of like stepped forward to keep him off, or to play him offside. Right? Yeah. But neither of them do a very good job, and neither of them would have been successful because the whole line did not step with them. So it just really put them out of possession. And so the ball gets right through. Hector Jimenez is tracking Ferreira's run, and him and Cascante both kind of hold up, I think because Ricardo Pepi was kind of lingering at the top of the box. And so they both kind of held up, and because Obrian had driven into the box and like up against the inline, they kind of dropped back to stop that cutback ball to Ricardo Pepi. Romagna doesn't really put enough pressure on Obrian there and leaves a little bit of a window to play it just straight down the line, which Obrian does, plays it through that window. Stuver doesn't react fast enough to block that cross in. Jesus Ferreira is standing essentially on the goal line by himself, nobody even looking at him, and just touches it in. And so there wasn't any one big mistake that happened there. It was just nobody doing their job completely correctly. And it's really frustrating to see, but especially, and it's not even a system thing, right? Like if everyone was doing it, like doing the right thing, or even 2 or 3 of them were doing the right thing, that goal wouldn't have happened. But it was like everybody did something wrong, leaving Ferreira wide open on the goal line to not even have to move to put the ball in.
Yeah, you just see 3 guys in white looking defeated there. I think it was Jimenez, Cascante, and Romagna all just like hands on knees, knowing that they had made sort of a big team error.
Yeah.
That led that to be tied up.
So in the 47th minute, like just after, this was after halftime, right?
It was right after halftime, because it's like right coming out of halftime. I think it was Ferreira almost got another quick one, like in the 45th minute, and then there's a little back and forth, and then there's a challenge on Danny in midfield.
Right. Yeah. And this is, I believe, Edwin Cerrillo. There's kind of a ball gets chipped, like popped up in the air off of a header. Danny Pereira is waiting for it to come down, and Cerrillo comes in and just decks him while he's waiting for the ball to drop. Never looks at the ball, knows exactly what he's doing the whole time, and
felt like he led with his shoulder, Danny. Right? Like shoulder into Danny's, like the top,
in
not
the
Danny's
middle
head,
of his back.
But into his back, yeah.
And Danny's head like kind of whiplashed, and he dropped and was having trouble breathing when he hit the ground. Do you think that should have been a red card?
I think that should have been. Yes, that's one I do think should have been a red card. It was just he wasn't making a movement on the ball at all, and it felt like it was what? Oh, you got the Wolff quote here that it was reckless but not violent, but it felt pretty violent and reckless both.
And that's not a quote from Wolff. That's what Wolff was told by the fourth
what he was
official.
Told. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and Wolff fought back against that. He said it looked pretty violent to me, and I agree with him. But yeah, the fourth official told him that it was reckless, therefore a yellow card, but not violent, therefore not a red card. And I think, like, by the letter of the law, that should be a red card. It's not one, like, as far as like the norms of the game and what is normally given in that situation. I think it's probably not going to be given most of the time just because of the circumstances. But by the letter of the law, I think that should have been a red card. Shortly after this, it was the 57th minute. Is that right? When the actual red card came.
Yeah. Then the red card came out. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is something that was worrying me from the beginning of the game. I think the first major moment happened in the 16th minute. There was we turned the ball over in the midfield with Nick Lima pushed really high into the attack. The midfielders don't drop in to cover for him. Romagna follows a forward into the midfield, and Pomykal makes a run down the right-hand side, and they launch a long ball to him. Luckily, that attack didn't turn into anything. But little moments like that were happening all night where the back line wasn't quite organized enough, or they weren't rotating properly from the midfield into the back line there. And just the overall defensive structure wasn't moving the way it should have been. And this is a moment where in this red card in the 47th minute, this is another thing that Wolff mentioned. I think Chris Bills asked him about speed. Or sorry, the 57th minute, not the 47th minute. Chris Bills asked him about speed, and he said, yeah, speed is an issue, but there's more issues at hand than speed in this situation. Like, it's not dropping whenever you see that long ball coming. It's dropping at the wrong time. It's kind of moving the wrong way at the wrong time. And so we get caught out with Pomykal making a run in behind. They launch it in. It bounces once. He's about to receive it. Hector Jimenez touches him with his hand. Pomykal smartly goes down. Red card. Jimenez is out. This one, I think, was probably shouldn't have been a red card. I think Pomykal played it really well to where he kind of forced the ref's hand. When Jimenez made the mistake of putting his hands out, right? Like, he didn't foul him, he didn't push him, he didn't pull him, he just kind of touched him. And as soon as that happens, Pomykal does the smart thing. I'm not going to fault Pomykal for going down, but he drops like Jimenez shot him. And I think he forces the ref's hand there, because even on review, I think you can't see enough of it to overturn that call. But yeah, red card, and then we have to play down a man the rest of the game. But a little bit harsh there for sure.
So we were next to each other when that happened, and did they go to VAR at all, or did they not even review
I
it?
mean, they halted play for a while, so okay. VAR definitely looked at it, but they didn't. So the rule is VAR, if they think there was a clear and obvious error, they'll tell the ref on the field to go over and take a look and have the opportunity to overturn it. So in that circumstance, the video assistant referee in the booth decided there was not a clear and obvious error, and therefore the primary official on the field didn't go take a look at it. So it looked like they did halt play though for a second for the video assistant ref to take a look. But yeah, I think once the call is made, I don't think the angle was there to be able to say that it was a mistake. So yeah, I just say congratulations, Paxton Pomykal for selling that one, because he did a good job at it.
Yeah, I think you really hit on it about sort of you just can't put yourself in that situation, like with everything that's going on.
Right. And that was
that's the thing I needed to avoid was because when I watched it today, I went back and watched it today because live I was like, oh, this is insane, and we're getting jobbed by the refs again all the time. And when I watched it this afternoon, I was like, okay, I can see how this is a red in the situation. So it's just like, overall, we should not have had that opportunity created.
Right. And yeah, and in the post-game press conference, Wolff seemed to be a bit more annoyed that we allowed that ball to get played over the top in the first place, and less about the red card. He seemed to be like, yeah, I understand the red card, sure, whatever. And I'm sure we'll get an email in the next few days saying whether it was or wasn't a red card. But he seemed to be more upset about us getting caught out to let that ball get played through in the first place, which, yeah, he's right. Like, if we don't let them play that easy of a ball, then Jimenez isn't in that situation. So, yeah, another example of the back line not being organized enough and not reacting in the right way to be able to cut out some of those plays.
So how do you think we did after that? We talked a little bit about this. We go into a 4-4-1. I don't know what your normal formations are playing down a man, but that seems like a pretty standard one would think.
Yeah, so we bring off Gite, put on Kolmanich. So we have essentially a full team, what we would be in our defensive 4-4-2 setup, but without a second forward at this point. And Driussi was up there by himself and ran a million miles during the rest of the game, just running all over the place, because instead of having the two players to press at the top, it was just him, and he was trying to do both jobs and did a decent job of it, considering the circumstances. But we really did like a pretty good job of bunkering and defending after that point, with even a man down, and then almost got a goal in the 73rd minute. Driussi almost scores off of a cross. I think maybe, I don't know, Ring or Fagundes, somebody crossed it in for him, and he almost puts it in, and it bounces over the crossbar. But if he hits that one a little bit cleaner, that might be 2-1 for Austin at that point in the 73rd minute. But just after that, Franco Jara comes on in the 78th, 79th minute and is on the field for about 30 seconds. His first touch of the match, scores, puts Dallas up 2-1. And so in this one, Obrian gets the ball kind of at the edge of the penalty box, plays a little cross in, who I'm not sure he was playing the ball to Jara. I kind of think he was hitting it into Ferreira at the top of the box. Ring is charging back, recovering, sticks a leg up and takes a little touch on the ball, and it kind of changes the direction and floats it into the vicinity of Jara. Jara does really well to kind of react and just kind of throw his body in the air and get a foot on it. And it happened so quickly and was so close range that Stuver barely has a chance to react, and the ball goes past him to put Dallas up 2-1.
Yeah, and we wouldn't threaten after that, really. And then so then that's about the point. I don't remember exactly when it happened, but when does Romagna go down? That's 80-ish, correct? It's after that goal, but before Mackenzie Gaines came in, I think. So somewhere between 80 and 84.
Was it before Mackenzie Gaines came in?
I thought it was.
I think it was after.
Oh, was it after? Okay, well that makes more sense given what happened. Okay.
Because I wanted to check that. I was watching to check, and I'm almost positive it happens after that last sub. So, yeah.
Yeah, because that sets it up where we had used all three substitution windows, so even though we'd only subbed in, 3 players, we couldn't sub again.
Correct, yeah. So I think some people were a bit confused as to why we didn't use another sub, even though you have 5 subs. We'd only use 3. You only get 3 windows within the run of play. So if you make a sub at halftime, that doesn't use one of your windows. You would still have 3 to use after that. So you can sub in 5 players, but only get those 3 windows and halftime to make those subs. And so we make our last sub in the, what minute was that? Let me pull that up real quick.
That was 84. Because so Kolmanich at 60,
okay.
Pochettino at 66, and then Gaines at 84.
Yeah, so Gaines comes on for Cascante, right? In the 84th minute.
Yep.
We're then playing Alex Ring is kind of playing center back and then pushing into midfield as we're pushing forward. Shortly after that, Johan Romagna ends up one-on-one on the sideline chasing down Jader Obrian, and at one point just kind of pulls up and falls to the ground. And to me, the way he went down, it looked like a hamstring, but the way he was moving after that, it didn't really look like a hamstring, but he was clearly in a lot of pain, could barely run. And that was for the last, 7 or 8 minutes of the game, including the stoppage time. But I think at one point, Romagna pleaded to get taken off. And then one point, Ring yelled at Wolff, telling him to take him off. And he's like, I saw Ring yell at him once. And then Wolff just looked at him and threw his hands up in the air. He was like, I got no more subs. I can't do it. And that's something I wanted to go back and look at, is if he could have played the subs a little bit smarter to not end up in that situation. And you could argue maybe he could have, but I don't know that there's a lot else he could have done there, really. Looking at the people on the bench, the only other defender we have on the bench at this point is Freddie Kleeman, and he clearly does not trust Freddie Kleeman to play in MLS games. We've not really seen him do it. And so Romagna isn't injured at that point. And so at the 84th minute, when he makes that last sub, I think he thinks Romagna can finish the game. And so you put in, instead of like being cautious and subbing out someone who might be a little too tired, you put on Gaines, hoping to maybe steal an equalizer in that moment. And then, like, do you think he could have done anything differently there as far as the subs go?
I mean, it's easy to think that, like, looking back. I mean, I think the only thing that he could have done is, so Kolnic comes on for GT at 60, Pochettino for Dominguez at 66. Like, he could have made both those subs together, maybe.
Yeah,
and preserve one more window. I think that's the only way that he could have done that. But that would be,
but at that
doing
moment,
it in anticipation of like, oh, somebody might get injured. Right now, we know that, but.
I think the next action on the timeline here maybe says why he'd made those subs separately. The next action here is a yellow card for Brad Stewart for time wasting, which we were doing a little bit of at that point because we were down a man, and like not trying to make the game go faster. And so making those two subs, I think you slow the game down a little bit. But I think you're right. That's really the only thing he maybe could have done. And maybe that would have been the smart move, is to bring those two guys off at once. But overall, like, I don't know. I think that's a hindsight's 2020 kind of thing. You don't expect Johan to go down at like 2 minutes after you use your last sub. So it's just a little bit unfortunate.
Yeah, I agree with that, because they weren't getting anything else out of, like you said, they weren't getting anything out of Kleeman, so there was no reason to hold on to that spot.
So Romagna ends the game playing center forward again, because it's the place he was going to have to run the least and not really run very much. So they just left him up there with Alex Ring as the only center back and only defensive midfielder. But nothing else really comes of the rest of the game, and it ends 2-1 FC Dallas. FC Dallas wins the first ever MLS version of Copa Tejas, and Austin is still in last place in the West.
Yeah, and so we talked about how bad they were on the road, and we found from Jordan Stewart in Slack, I think, did a pretty good job of expressing exactly how bad we were. So since beating Minnesota on May 1st, Austin FC is winless in 13 road matches, including 4 losses and a draw when scoring the first goal. In every case, it was their only goal. We've only scored more than one goal on the road exactly once in Denver, and it was the only time that we've won when conceding first. Vancouver has more come from behind wins against Austin than Austin has against the entire league. Like, that's a pretty bad it's a pretty bad run to end the season, which I think we on the Striker live show, we talked about how bad we were on the road and came up with reasons why this would be different, right? Because we got to travel early and we got to drive and we had our best 11 and all those other things. But apparently we're just a really, really bad road team.
I think we were like bad for different reasons, though. Like, the energy was there. I felt like the team fought. So
we had
like
the lead
at the end of the game, like I think I turned, I don't think it was to you, maybe it was to Ashley, but I was like, I'm still proud of these guys. Like, they fought really hard the whole game. I don't think anybody can look at that game and think that anybody didn't care about it. And so it was different reasons, but still absolutely not good enough. And so, it's very frustrating and very disappointing that we lose away games in such a variety of ways. So looking at the post-game press conference, there's, I think, a few moments that stood out. Another thing I mentioned in the live stream before the show was how I feel like Austin kind of shot themselves in the foot by pressing FC Dallas too much. And Wolff said that exact thing after the game. And I was curious to know if that was planned pressing or if it was the players going when they shouldn't have. And Wolff essentially said, like, there was moments we were going to press in certain moments and sit back in other moments, and that the players kind of weren't sure when to go and kind of pushed up on their own in moments when they weren't supposed to. And so, and we were pressing in inopportune moments and not really setting ourselves up to succeed. and then the back line wasn't moving as a unit and kind of dropping in when those long balls were coming in, and it set us up to be in really dangerous positions a lot, and it ended up being one of the things that killed us in this game. There's some other stuff that Wolff said about, kind of unprompted, about needing
better players. I mean, not more talent. I guess not better players, but more talent overall.
He kind of did just say we need better players, though, at one point, right?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I guess if I was I don't know, if I was defending my system and was where we are, I might also like suggest that I needed a little more help too. But yeah, he definitely brought that up, which I thought was a little bit interesting. It seems like a midweek press conference kind of a thing, and not necessarily the thing you talk about in the post game after coming out of this one. Yeah, I mean,
Eric Goodman's question was like, what does your team need to do to be able to pull wins off like this? And that came out of that question. And so it wasn't out of nowhere, but it was also not exactly the question. And so it a little bit telling. He's like, yeah, we need better players, and we're working on that right now. So stay tuned.
Oh yeah, I did like that part of it too.
And then Diego Fagundes was the player who was available for media afterwards. What were some of the things that he said during his bit?
I guess so. We don't know anybody's contract situation, but I suppose from Diego's comments, it must be up at the end of this year, because he talked a lot about how much he loves Austin. He's not going anywhere. He's staying here. This is his new home. And then that was his initial. I don't remember who asked him that question the first time, but then Michel Sanchez basically asked him to repeat it in Spanish, and he said the whole thing over again in Spanish. So he really made a big commitment to Austin overall.
So did you get the idea that his contract is up at the end of this year?
I got the idea out of that answer that I did, because otherwise I don't know why he would talk about not going anywhere unless he had options to go somewhere.
So I think I would imagine with a guy that young as a free agent, we probably did get a multi-year contract out of him, but there were rumblings earlier this season from him getting offers from overseas, playing in Uruguay, and I can't remember what the other countries were, but maybe he was referring to that. I would be surprised if he were on only a 1-year contract, as young as he is. But if he is on a 1-year contract, it means that he'll get to renegotiate that contract at the end of this year, and we'll probably get a raise. But if he's not, I don't know. Maybe he was just referring to not wanting to leave the league. But in any case, it's good to hear that Diego's committed and is hoping to stay for a while.
Yeah, it is. Do you want to talk about any other players specifically that we didn't get into during the game review?
Only one, which is Danny Pereira. We already kind of mentioned. We didn't talk about Danny Pereira yet.
We haven't talked about Danny Pereira yet.
Yeah, so Danny playing the 6. We all know he's good on the ball, carries the ball really well, dribbles out of pressure really well, and he did that against Dallas. Like he was good in all those areas, but was still pretty poor in defensive transition. There was several moments where he wasn't good enough in killing transitions, winning balls, stepping in and putting out fires. And you need your 6 to be able to do those things. And he very rarely did any of that. So I think Josh Wolff definitely needs to either play Alex Ring in that 6 position, like that needs to be the move going forward, or we need to bring someone else in, because I think playing Danny Pereira at the 6 by himself is not a good long-term solution. He's just not the ball winner, not that kind of that destroyer you need in those moments.
So where do you see his ultimately his where do you see him playing? You see him playing like at an 8, or where do you think he's best suited?
I like him sitting deep like that, because he is good at kind of turning out of those moments, turning out of the game. But like I do think I kind of like him maybe in a double pivot with another guy back there as kind of the destroyer role, or in kind of an 8 position, kind of like where Ring plays. But it kind of seems like playing him at the 6 is just a way to get him on the field, because if we bring in another 6, you're not like Danny's not starting over Ring or Driussi. And so maybe he's just like a rotation option there at that point, which I think on a really good MLS team, that's what Danny Pereira is a rotation option. He's not a starter on a really good MLS team. So if he is a rotation option, I think that's a good sign for Austin FC.
Well, let's get into the rest of the year, which is coming up soon. But before we do that, we should probably take a break.
Yeah, let's do it. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Moontower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FVF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FVF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education.
You can go to fvf.law to find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcomes of a case. Once again, that's fvf.law.
All right, let's talk about hot sauce now.
Let's do it.
Let's talk about Teardrop Pepperco hot sauce. Or is it Pepperco? Pepper Company? I guess
Pepper
their website's
Company.
Pepperco. They are Pepper Company. Teardrop Pepper Company has finally created the perfect recipe right here in Austin, Texas. Their all-natural, award-winning hot sauce has a delicious blend of flavor and heat, enhancing your favorite foods and leaving you wanting more.
Whether you like the zesty kick of golden habanero or garlicky smoothness of supreme serrano, it's the best way to spice up your Austin FC pre-match meals. Teardrop Pepper Company has 2 unique flavors available, and you can order them from their website, teardroppepperco.com, or from their social media pages.
And you can use offer code GOAL to save 10% off your order. Put it on everything, they'll make more. And that ended up in somebody's Halloween. Did you see that?
No.
Somebody who listens, I think maybe it was Devin on their candy basket wrote, "Take what you want, they'll make more" on it, which came out of the Teardrop Pepperco read. So
I missed that.
We're creating lasting impressions right here on the ad reads.
Thanks for the support, Devin. We appreciate it. And we are back. So, Jeremiah, we've only got 2 games left for the season. They're both this week. We've got Sporting KC at Q2 on Wednesday, which is the last home game, and then Portland on November 7th, which is a Sunday, as the last game total, which is also, it's decision day, right? That's when everyone will find out exactly who's in the playoffs. There will be no decisions made for Austin.
Our decisions are made.
Day. Our decisions are made. But last 2 games of the season, it's kind of hard to believe. It's it seems like it's been forever since the season started, and also like it happened 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's just been such a whirlwind. And I don't know if it's just the compressed schedule, and then we didn't have a home game until June. But yeah, it seems really weird. I get really sad when I look at my SeatGeek app, and there's only one set of tickets left in it.
Yeah, so there's, like we said, there's no real results to play for. Copa Tejas was kind of the last big thing to look forward to, and that's past now. Does Austin have anything left to play for? How motivated is this team going to be in these last 2 games?
I mean, there's nothing in it for them. I mean, there's a little bit of a spoiler role maybe against Portland, but I mean, you just have to believe that these guys are perfect. I guess what they have for them, hopefully on Wednesday, is to look good at Q2, right? Because they talk a lot about the support that came up. I think both Josh and Diego talked about how, they really love the traveling crowd and wish they played more. And so, I mean, hopefully, just looking good in front of the fans is the thing they'll have for them on Wednesday. And then on Sunday at Portland, I think there's 144 people have bought tickets. So there should be another good showing. So if nothing else, maybe they'll just try to look good in front of the supporters who have followed them all year long.
We can only hope.
I mean, individually, there's got to be people playing for contracts or people playing for to have a
spots,
job next year, spots or whatever.
Don't replace me in the off season. There are definitely going to be some guys in those situations, and so we'll hope that those end up being the guys on the field and that they actually do fight for it. But yeah. One thing that is clear is that I think the 2 teams we're playing against will be motivated. So Sporting Kansas City is in first place in the West right now. And if they stay first place in the West, they'll essentially have home field advantage all the way throughout the playoffs. They could slip down and have it up until a certain point until they face someone who's a spot above them. But I think they'll be they'll be fighting to get that, and then also a CONCACAF Champions League spot. If they win the Western Conference this season, that spot gets a spot in CCL. So definitely still have some motivation. And it seems like they're also going to have a pretty big crowd coming to town. Is that right?
Yeah, I believe they're supposed to have about 150 people to come down, which is pretty good from Sporting KC, which seems Kansas City seems so far away. But I think we've talked about this. It's actually the third closest MLS franchise to Austin, like only further away than Dallas and Houston. Yeah, and they're tied right now on points with Seattle and only up on goal differential. So I mean, it's a really tight race for first in the West. They'd be very motivated. They're 3 wins and 2 losses in their last 5. Lost to Minnesota United on Halloween 2-1. Minnesota's been in a pretty good streak too, so that's not that surprising. So their attack is led by, so Johnny Russell what is he? He's from Ireland, correct?
Irish or Scottish, I don't know.
He's dang it. Yeah, he's not from England, but he's from somewhere on one of those islands, right? He's got 14 goals. He causes a lot of people a lot of trouble.
He's Scottish. He's Scottish. I just looked it up. Okay.
Oh man, there's going to be some. I don't know if James Vincent listens or not, but if he does, he's gonna be really, really mad at me right now about covering that up. But I mean, he's always a threat. Looked good against Minnesota United, and then their other leader in attack was 16 goals. Is Daniel Saloy, I think.
Shallowy, I believe is how you pronounce it. Okay. But awesome. Young Hungarian kid who's been so good this year that he's been in some people's MVP discussion. I think he's recovering from a slight injury, but I think he played 30 some odd minutes in that last game. So he would likely be ready to go, if not starting, at least off the bench for this game. I think, is Alan Pulido still injured? I believe he's still out.
I think he's still out. Yeah.
But they don't seem to be missing him much at this point because they're in really good form. Johnny Russell is in really good form. And so with Russell and Shallowy on either side coming at us, that's a really potent attack to try to defend against.
Yeah, and then so their keeper, Tim Milia, did you see all this stuff, the Seattle Sounders thing, and somehow The Rock got involved on Twitter?
Yeah.
Can you maybe for people who don't live their lives on Twitter, can you explain that situation a little bit?
Yeah, so I think it was either a set piece, some type of set piece. I think it was a corner that Christian Roldan kind of like Milia goes up to punch a ball and Roldan backs into him and like a pretty dangerous play in the moment and goes down. And I think in that same moment or just afterwards, Roldan is kind of like backing Milia into his own goal. And Milia grabs him around the throat and does like essentially a wrestling move and just like pile drives him into the floor and ends up getting just a yellow card. It absolutely should have been a red and like a multi-game suspension probably. I think retroactively he got a 1-game suspension, but should have been sent off in the moment. Maybe Roldan should have been sent off for the moment before or at least gotten a yellow, but Milia only got a yellow. And so he ended up serving a 1-game suspension last week, but he should be back for this game against us.
Yeah, he will be. And then so our previous experience was, man, I mean, the game that the season all turned on May 9th when we were off to one of the best starts for a first-year expansion team in French in like the history of the league. We lost 2-1 after we took a 1-0 lead and Alex Ring got a red card. And then that led to a really, really bad, month or so after that?
It could have all been different.
For sure. And then we went there in June and drew away 1-1. So we've got 1 loss and 1 draw, and this is one of the clubs that will play 3 times this year, which is something I'm not in love with. And one of the things I'm looking forward to about 2022 is getting a little bit more of a balanced schedule.
Yeah, balanced maybe competition-wise, and then also just not having so many damn home games in a row and like giving ourselves a bit of a break during the season.
For sure.
Anything else you wanted to cover for the Kansas City game?
No, let's just go on to Portland. Like you said, they're both playing for something. So Portland's sitting in 4th on 49 points, but it's still not guaranteed a playoff spot. I think maybe 8th or 9th place is at 45. So there's still a logjam kind of right around where they are after the top 3 in the league. So they should have all the reason in the world to want to play and win.
Yeah, I think it's possible that even likely that they will have clinched by that game, but not guaranteed. Because I think like if LAFC draws or loses on Wednesday, then Portland is in. So they could lose both of these games they have left and still get into the playoffs. But it could turn out being where they have this one game to play their way into the playoffs, or at least clinch a playoff spot and have it in their hands. And so, yeah, I think they'll definitely be motivated. Dairon Asprilla, who in the last two Austin games has been like fine at best, he notoriously comes alive in playoff season. And so he scored an amazing goal, will probably be in goal of the year contention at the end of the season. So he's in good form. Felipe Mora has 11 goals on the season. And so, yeah, I think there's not going to be any easy games in these last two for sure.
Yeah, and that doesn't even cover, like, I mean, there's Charas who are still playing. Yeah, Jimmy Charas playing really well, particularly. And so I think that will definitely not be an easy match. So let's talk, we have in here that if they finish fourth, they would host a first round match. We're going to get into playoffs next week, but just so people know, the bracket is the first place team gets a bye. Is that how it works? First
Correct,
place team gets a bye. Okay.
And so I don't think we mentioned that, but SKC will be playing for that bye as well. And then the first four teams will get to play at home in at least the first round, and then kind of depending how things shake out from there, the higher seed will play at home. But if you finish in the top four, which Portland is in fourth right now, and will want to stay that way, then they'll be guaranteed to get that home field advantage, at least in the first round, if not further on, depending on who they play in the next round.
Gotcha. So yeah, as of right now, they would play Minnesota at home. So it's 2 plays 7, 3 hosts 6, 4 hosts 5. And then the team of the bye will be waiting on the winner of the 4-5 game. But we'll get into that next week in a lot more detail. So I think so this is something I wrote in here. I want to talk about food, and I want to talk about because we've got our last home game on Wednesday. And one of the things I really noticed in Dallas or in Frisco was how much better our food options are at Q2. And really made me appreciate like actual local restaurants and everything, not just being like generic concession stand food like we got in high school, which is what we got there. So I found this article on the Austin FC website, which is Chef Sam, and he had his three recommendations. His top 3 are the tostada you could take it from One Taco, the vegan Sonoran dog from T-Lox, and the hatch chili queso verde from the Queso Fountain were his top 3 choices. Have you had any of those 3 things at the stadium?
I've had the not vegan Sonoran dog from unless they're not all vegan, are they? Maybe I got fooled and got a vegan one next to these, but I'm pretty sure the one I got was not vegan. But I did very much enjoy the T-Lox hot dog.
All right, I've had the hatch chili queso verde from the Queso Fountain, and that was really good. But like, what's your favorite? Do you have a go-to food? Do you eat at the stadium?
Yeah, we do occasionally. I like the bao from Bowed Up. That's a pretty, as far as like quality to price ratio, I think that's a pretty good shout. And then sometimes if we're just like running late, there's a handful of things that you can order on the Austin FC app and just run and pick up. And one of those things is the Double Dave's pepperoni rolls. And so for convenience, we'll do the pepperoni rolls every once in a while. But if we get in there early, I'll go for the T-Lox hot dog or the Bowed Up pretty often because the lines aren't super long and it's not that expensive. But I would like to try some other things. I just kind of like found a couple of things that work and are fast, and so I've been kind of sticking to those.
Yeah, Jackson loves the pepperoni rolls, which is wild. I mean, whatever, because we can get that by the house all the time too. He usually gets those, and I get the brisket taco from Valentina's a lot because it's right by the supporter section, and if you get there early enough, the line's not that bad, and it's kind of pricey for one taco, but it's really, really good, so it's worth eating.
Yeah, I might have to try this tostada yucateca from One Taco.
That would be the one I would try. But we had the queso fountain, had chili queso verde like for the first game and haven't had it since. So maybe a return trip to the queso fountain to get those will be our plan for the Wednesday night match.
Start the year end the year as you started it.
Yes, as is tradition.
All right. In other Austin FC news, Micah Burton, who is part of the U17 Academy team, got called up to the U17 national team for their first youth camp since the pandemic started. So that's really exciting. That's Austin FC's first international call up, right? So,
well, second. John would be our first, but
that's right. Yeah, I guess the first youth call up is going to be I guess the first call up from the academy. But I was really excited to hear this, and so it is the U17 national team, but all of the players that got called up are actually U16 or younger. And so it seems like the most recent U17 World Cup that was supposed to happen got canceled because of the pandemic. And it seems like they're hoping to be able to have one in 2022. And so I would imagine this camp is kind of preparing for that. And so they picked players who are a year younger than would be allowed to be in that camp in preparation that these are going to be the players they're going to be choosing from. So I think I was a little bit surprised to hear that if Micah Burton got called up, that there weren't also one or two others from the Austin FC team, but the other best players on that team are a year older than Micah, essentially. So really exciting. Micah Burton is one of the players that came in from Minnesota when they kind of pared down their academy a year and a half ago or so, and has been playing with that U17 team. So he's one of the few U16 age group players that has been starting and getting minutes with that older group and has looked like the best player on the field at times. So really exciting, and I think really well deserved. So hopefully he can impress on the national stage and continue to get those call-ups and hopefully play in some competitions for the U.S. in the near future.
So you've seen him play probably more than most. Is there anything about his game that is particularly notable other than him just clearly like he's a forward, first of all, which I don't think we said,
yeah,
people who don't necessarily, or that's what he's listed at here as a forward, not a midfielder. But like,
he's more.
What do you know about him?
For Austin, he's played as like kind of an attacking midfielder more so than a forward. Really smooth on the ball, really skillful, like dribbles around people and does, just really impressive. Kind of like running circles around dudes on the ball sometimes. He's also like decent physicality, like even with these U17 teams, he's not a huge guy, but has a decent frame on him and holds his own against bigger, stronger players at times. But I think he's got a real chance to, as he like matures a little bit and gets some more experience, to be a really exciting player to watch.
Yeah, and then the camp itself. So camp is what, November 1st to 8th. Apparently, it's the kickoff the 2022-2023 cycle. So, what do we expect of it? Do they play? They don't play anybody, right?
There's not going to be any games. I imagine it's a pretty big group. So I think there's 30 some odd players that got called in. So I imagine it'll be just coaches getting to know them, getting a look at them, and then doing some scrimmaging among the players, and probably just so that the coaches can get an idea of who they are and who they might want to call in again going forward as they do get closer to some real competitions.
We have first team news of sorts, is that Roddy Redes, well, it was announced today that Roddy Redes had a surgery on his meniscus, which we've heard about, right? He picked up a knock at some point in the preseason.
Right.
Didn't talk about it for a while. Josh brought it up later in the year. We don't necessarily know that it's even the same injury or not, do we?
No, they've never confirmed that. So yeah, that slight knock there, and then I guess the day of, or maybe the day before the FC Dallas game, they announced that he would be on the injured list for that game. And then today, on Monday, we got news that he had surgery on it today and is recovering. But it was a meniscus injury this time. Like you said, we don't know if it was the same injury or if this is a new injury. But a meniscus injury is much less severe than other common knee injuries. So I think a lot of people are familiar with ligament injuries, ACL, MCL tears, meniscus is more of like a cartilage damage thing. And so this procedure is pretty minor, and you can recover from it in a few weeks, really.
Yeah. So, and you got, well, okay, two things. So first of all, I went to the 4ATX Foundation Gala last week, and Rodney was at my table, and he did not appear to have any trouble moving at the speed the speed at which one walks around a gala table, which is really kind of slow. But you know, the poor guy, like having to listen to people talk for 2 hours in a language you don't understand is probably not the greatest way to have an experience. But also, so you did a little research, right, on the injury and what it might be and the recovery. So can you share a little bit of that?
Yeah. So this is all coming. My cousin Amber is a physical therapist and has been doing that for quite a while now. So I figured she'd have a pretty good idea of what this injury was and what it meant. And this is primarily in response to, I saw quite a few people online acting as if like this is proof that the team had mismanaged Rodney and that they did a bad job managing this injury if he's having surgery now. But I just wanted to find out, like, what is this injury and does it always need surgery? And so what my cousin told me is that a meniscus, this is a quote here, meniscus doesn't always need to be repaired because part of the meniscus is really vascular. And if that part is injured, the prognosis is really good to return to previous level of function without surgery. If it's the part of the meniscus that is less vascular, the likelihood of self-repair is less and therefore may be less successful without surgical repair. Therapy and proper exercise and activity modification are very successful in treating most meniscus injuries. And so she had some more information in there, but essentially said that depending on what kind of injury it is, can generally, it's a lot of times just going to cause discomfort. If it's worse than that, it is actually causing is changing your joint mechanics, then those are the moments when you likely do need surgery before you're going to be able to return to activity. So without knowing what the injury was exactly, or if this is an older injury or another, like a new secondary injury, or the same injury made worse by a new incident, there's no way to really know what this was. So I think, did you read anything into this? Do you think this is some great mismanagement of Rodney Redes by not having surgery earlier?
No, I don't. I mean, I know I did see a lot of that today, and I don't know what people are. I think there was some discussion about, did that make you feel better or worse? It's like, is this the reason that Rodney's been not that great all year? I don't think the meniscus injury and like Rodney Redes' performance on the field this year are terribly directly related.
Yeah,
I think if it was really holding him back, he would have had the surgery, right? That's how I feel about it. Yeah,
I think so too. And like, if we had more information and there was like, this has been the same injury all along and he could have had surgery early on in the season and it would have actually improved his performance and his speed and his agility by having that surgery, then yeah, I think that maybe is a mismanagement. But we don't know that. Like, we don't know what it was. And Dave Tinney is very highly respected in his field. He would have been one of the people involved in kind of advising Rodney on that. They're not going to play a guy if he's not playing to his best ability, especially with such a quick recovery time on a surgery like this. And then B, if it's going to cause more damage, they're not going to continue to play him. And so I have a hard time believing that this was they're forcing Rodney to play through pain or something because they wanted him available. I think it's more of a thing like either it's a new injury or it wasn't that bad and they're just like, yeah, just wait till the end of the season if it's not bothering you that much.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I think we are, right? I mean, just like we said before, what do we have left to play for? We got 2 games left. What do we get out of Rodney playing now? We get, like, Rodney's best use is to go ahead and get the surgery and start the recovery process to have the best 2022 that he can possibly have. Yeah, there's no benefit to having him on the field for these last 2 games.
Yeah, we've got enough depth at that position.
We got enough wingers.
We don't need him. Yeah, and then it's like I think 3 to 6 weeks is like full recovery on this, and so he can be rehabbed and fully recovered before preseason even starts. And so, hopefully it does make him a much better player, the player we hoped he was going to be. I don't have high hopes for that because I watched him a lot in Paraguay before he had any injuries and stepped foot in Austin. I think he's still young. We could see him improve, but I don't know that his form had a lot to do with any knee injury.
Yeah, you're right. If he's gonna, it's just gonna be development. If anything happens, we saw a lot of development out of Romagna this year. If we're looking at the guys from Guarani, I think we have one more piece of Austin. What's not Austin FC news? We have one more piece of Q2 Stadium news to share.
Yeah, so there had been rumors of the Mexican national team playing a friendly at Q2 Stadium, and it was finally made official today that on December 8th, Mexico and Chile are going to be playing a game at Q2 Stadium, which is pretty freaking cool. Like, it's cool that any national teams are like choosing this place to come and play a friendly at, but the fact that it's the Mexican national team, I think the pre-sale tickets go on sale on Tuesday, the day that this episode releases, and I imagine they will sell out and then immediately be on sale for 5 times marked up on the secondary market immediately.
Yeah, I would have to imagine this will be a super hot ticket. So this will continue the string of every match this year being sold out, I would imagine, at Q2, because we've also had with the U.S. women's national team played to sell out, and the men's national team has played twice, right? In a Gold Cup semifinal and then the World Cup qualifier. So this will definitely continue that streak. And that's something I'm struggling with because I don't necessarily want to go to the game, but I'm going to, but I have access to tickets. So I could commit now. If I get tickets, I will sell them at face value to somebody, on SeatGeek to not scalp them.
I think I'll probably sit this one out, but it'll be fun to watch on TV to see that like a different crowd and a different energy coming into Q2 and kind of seeing it just spotlighted to a new audience as well. So I'm excited about that one. I know you said that was the last thing, but I want to circle back to a thing you briefly mentioned that I kind of actually wanted to talk about on the show. Was you went to the 4ATX Foundation event and sat at a table with some of the Austin FC players.
Yeah, so I got invited. So the 4ATX Foundation, right, which is the club's foundation, had a gala that was on Thursday of last week, and it's about 200 people at it. It was at the stadium. There was like a pregame VIP thing in the field club, and the event itself was at the Q2 club. But one of the things is a lot of the tables had players at them, and so I knew this was going to happen. And our table ended up having Johan Romagna and Ronnie Redis at our table, which is luckily our table is very bilingual because those poor guys, they're like some from Colombia and one's from Paraguay, and they'd probably like, I can't imagine any player loves sitting through like 2 hours of like presentations and like live auction and silent auction people talking, but it would be much harder if like you weren't a native speaker of the language too, I think. But they were smiling, they were happy, and everybody else at the table talked to, and they seemed to have a good time. And Andy Loughnane came to me like 3 times and like wanted to know if anybody said anything that was like podcast worthy content wise. And so I didn't hear that. So the guys all did a really good job of like keeping whatever secrets they had to themselves. So the most interesting thing that I learned was, because this was Thursday night and the game was on Saturday, was that none of them could drink. So they all just drank water. And that was it. But yeah, it was a beautiful event. Brad Stuver won like a humanitarian award for a player. And so I got to talk to him and his wife for a little bit. And then Derek Chubbs, the CEO of the Central Texas Food Bank, won like the other award. But yeah, it was cool. It was Adrian Healy emceed it. I think my favorite line of the night was that Adrian Healy said that the salads looked as good as Julio Cascante, and Julio Cascante was sitting like one table over and just like smiled and turned red in a way that you would.
Julio does speak English and definitely understood that.
Yeah, he absolutely knew what was going on, and he was super embarrassed by it, but probably also appreciated it at the same time too. So, no, it was a fun event.
All right. Well, anything else we want to cover before we wrap up?
No, let's just look forward to a good final week of the season. And then one of the things that I think Ashley and Brandy have both asked us is like, what does the off-season schedule look like? Like, will you guys have things to talk about?
Yeah.
when there aren't games. And I think you have the best answer. So can you answer that question right quick?
Oh yeah, like people ask like, what are you going to talk about during the off season? It's like, we've been doing a show for like 3 years, so we'll have stuff to talk about. Don't worry. But honestly, there's actually quite a bit to talk about, especially in like the immediate postseason. Roster moves will start almost immediately. You'll have stuff shaking up really quickly. So we don't really plan on taking much of a break. Maybe a break over Thanksgiving and then another one around Christmas time. But we plan on putting out shows pretty much nonstop until the next season starts. So, which is rumored to start at the end of February. We don't have official dates yet, but it's going to be a relatively short off season compared to years past. So there won't be a ton of space to fill, but we are going to continue to put out shows, and we'll have quite a bit to talk about and quite a bit of news to cover, most likely. So, yeah, don't think we're going anywhere. We'll definitely be here the whole time.
Yeah, and one thing that I want to hopefully do in this off season that we don't know yet, that we can't commit to, is like get some more people from the club, because I feel like the team was like super busy during the year because they're like putting on a season, and they were putting on a season sort of in a rush with the way the schedule stacked up. So hopefully we'll get some more folks on from the team, players, front office staff, or whatever. And I think we would be super interested in hearing, from folks who listen, like who would be a good guest? Who should we talk to? It's funny. This is another Andy story. So I was like, I want to have that guy on, and I was pointing at Adrian Healy, but he was standing with Josh Wolff, and Andy's like, "Yeah, you should totally have Josh Wolff." And I was like, "Well, that guy too," but actually, but I don't know.
If you'll give us Josh Wolff, we'll take it.
Right. Oh yeah, then he's like, "Well, I mean, I can't speak for the PR staff. Like, I don't know, but yeah, we would love to hear from y'all. Like, who either from Austin FC or from the league, or what writers or whatever. Like, what do you want to hear from us that would help you sort of get excited about the lead up to next season?
We're also in talks with some friends of the show to maybe do some kind of off the wall fun things as like little one-off episodes. So hopefully we can get some of that nailed down and have some more information about that pretty soon. But in short, stay tuned. We're not going anywhere. All right. We would like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And then if you'd like to continue the conversation, come find us on Twitter. I'm at LViajero87. Jeremiah's at JBentley_ATX. And then we're at Moontower Soccer, both on Instagram and Twitter. We'd also encourage you to visit the Striker Texas website. Jeremiah, what should folks look for?
Well, there was a lot of really good Copa Tejas coverage in the run-up to it. So I think, and including like 2 or 3 articles a day, like in the day before and the day of. So maybe catch up a little bit on that and check that out. Phil's done some good stuff with Josh Wolff, if you didn't read that last week. And just keep following the Striker Texas and subscribe if you're not. Hopefully you are. But if you're not, like, you can't get this kind of coverage anywhere for this
honestly,
club. It's not
that expensive. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much for listening. We'll be back in 1 week with a new episode of Moontower Soccer, where we will recap the last matches of the season. Again, very strange to say. And then Phil West is going to join us to preview the MLS playoffs. And then we also made some predictions earlier on in the season, and we're going to revisit those predictions, which I imagine will be fun and embarrassing. Probably some okay ones, and probably lots of very bad predictions. But until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
No one is around.
Muchas gracias. Bye bye.